What's up, everyone? The HOH has made their nominations, and one of those nominations has been disrupted, forcing the HOH to nominate another player for eviction. Find out exactly what happened right here, guys. So welcome to your live feed update. We will start the video off talking about who the initial nominees were. So obviously the live feeds went down, they came back, and we found out that Dani had nominated David and Kevin for eviction. So straight off the bat, guys, you know, some of you probably know already what's happened with the disruptor power, but I'm going to ask you to comment who you think will be evicted this week, because there's a lot to throw around this week, because I think it looked to be straightforward, then there could have been a backdoor plan, but I think with this disruptor power, it's being thrown left, right, and centre. So let me know in the comments who you think will be evicted this week. We will discuss David's disruptor power shortly, but first things first, we're going to discuss the initial fallout of the nomination ceremony. So Dani goes to Kevin and says that she genuinely cares about him, and she literally told him that she would be his campaign manager for this week, and Kevin said that he's going to fight like hell to get off the block. He's really going to try his best to win the veto and make sure he's in safety come Thursday night for the eviction. And also the fact that Kevin did actually tell Dani, don't feel bad about it. It was damage control both ways, you know, Kevin acting nice because he doesn't want to further damage his place on the block, and Dani doesn't want Kevin to feel like he's the target when he's not. So, you know, it's exactly what both of them are supposed to be doing, because we know if Kevin wins HOH, he's probably going to come back with a vengeance and try to get Dani on the block. Dani was talking to Cody, saying that Tyler said he wouldn't target her until they get to the final four, and if we know anything to do with Tyler, we know that's not going to be true. We know that Tyler, as soon as he gets to a bit of power, he wants to target Dani. He wants her out. There's been a little bit of something brewing for the past few weeks now, and it seems as though someone has taken the first shot, so we'll shortly move on to what's happened with David's disruptor power. Enzo asked Corey if Dani would be willing to backdoor someone this week if the veto is used, and the idea of Tyler getting backdoored was brought up, but it seems as though those sort of chances are scuppered, because the theme of talking about Tyler as one of these players that if you take a swing at him you cannot miss, because it can come and be totally fatal to your game afterwards, and it seems as though Dani has to take the shot beforehand, as David has used his disruptor power and saved himself from being nominated. The feeds went down, feeds came back up, and Tyler has found himself on the block. Straight away, Dani was doing damage control with Tyler, swearing to him that he is not the target this week and she does not want him out of the house. I just find it extremely hard to believe. Yeah, you can pile off all you want that David is the target or Kevin's the target. David can't be the target now, and she's just swore to Kevin that she'd be his campaign manager. So, you know, pick a side. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, are you going to go for Kevin? Are you going to go for Tyler? But you've swore to both of those that you're not that you're going to try and keep them in the house this week, and they're not going home. So that's pretty crappy jury management, if you ask me, because that sort of style of gameplay is never respected. If you head to the jury, people don't tend to give you the vote. If you promise them the world one week and then they're out the house, it just doesn't work. David denied using the power to Davon, and Kevin saying that it wasn't him who saved himself off the block. He is trying to pile off as if it's someone else, and he was sort of creating this elaborate conversation, as you saw in the thumbnail. I stick it on the screen now, but this is what he said to them in conversation with them, trying to pile off that it was someone else who used the power. It's a very great move, you know, and he's actually pulling it off. Nobody is actually believing he had it, you know. All this week long, people have believed that Tyler's had a power or someone else has had the power, and nobody has said anything about David, so it's extremely easy for them to believe that David was not the one who saved himself, and to be honest, if anyone's going to save anyone, David isn't that much of a threat, so I guess saving David would make sense, because then you're not saving a big threat and you're avoiding you're avoiding a weaker target going out the door, so it would make sense if someone else saved David, so he's doing that very well, but we'll see as the week transpires if people are going to realise that it was him who used the power, or is he actually going to get away with this. David is starting to pile it off as if Christmas was the one to save him with the power, and people are slightly believing it actually. Davon obviously has a fantastic read on the game, and she did sort of bring up the idea, the notion of it could be just David acting, and exactly, you know, I think anyone could probably just mention that, because there's always that idea in someone's head, but you know what, he's actually doing it well to the point where people are actually leaning towards believing it was Christmas. But Davon and Kevin were discussing this, Memphis was discussing it, so people actually are getting a slightly paranoid, a bit annoyed, and it's really just stirring the pot, and people are starting to really trying to think about who's doing it. Dani's doubting Nicole, thinking Nicole was the one who saved him, and it's just really people who are talking to their closest allies, believing that they are lying to them and that they were the ones who saved David, because it seems as though everyone thinks somebody else saved David. Like, you know, it's not even just one person going, okay, it was all Christmas. Yeah, there's a few people pointing the finger towards Christmas, but you know, Dani's going to Nicole, and Davon and Kevin are going towards David. You know, some people are going towards Christmas. It's like every single person in the house has pretty much got a bit of blame for this. Christmas and Dani were discussing actually who has the votes to stay this week, and they believe Tyler has the votes to stay. But if Tyler comes up off the block, Dani was saying the only people that can guarantee that would stay would be putting up Christmas, Enzo, or Memphis as a replacement nom. I think things could get catastrophic if Memphis goes on the block, because I think it's going to be very, very easy for this big alliance or this big voting block that's been voting together to flip on Memphis and really kickstart the season into second gear, because we haven't really seen that shift of power yet. It's very sort of same old every single week, and it's working. You know, people are keeping themselves safe, but it's not it's not something where the power's going backwards and forwards as we have seen in previous seasons. So if Memphis was to go on the block, it would certainly shake things up if he was the replacement nom. Shortly after that conversation, Dani went to speak to Memphis to tell her that one of the replacement nominees, if Tyler comes off, will be Enzo or Christmas. So Memphis would obviously be out the equation there. If she had mentioned Memphis as a potential renom, as a replacement nom, Memphis might have gotten a bit angry. We just don't know how he would have reacted. He may have stayed chill, but I think knowing Memphis, he probably would have panicked. And especially with him playing the lone wolf strategy, you can't anticipate what he's going to do. But Dani said that she is hoping Christmas offers herself up again as the pawn. But if this is just something that happens week after week after week where Christmas is going up as the pawn, it's probably not going to look great in the end game, because let's be honest, the people who've won Big Brother in the past, sorry, couldn't get my words out there, guys. People who've won Big Brother in the past don't tend to have a track record of offering themselves up to go on the block. It's been done sometimes, but it's sort of like the more respected style of game is people who've avoided the block and made these big moves. And yeah, Christmas has been winning comps, but she hasn't really made huge moves. And you know, with her getting to the end, her game resume will look like a couple of comp wins plus pawn every single week. More confusion in Big Brotherville as Tyler says to Dani, was it him who actually used the power? Was it her who actually used the power to save David? Because he would view that as this sort of master plan, sort of incredible play that would look fantastic in the final two if you pitch that to the jury, saying that if she was the one who put the noms up, it's like the perfect crime. Nobody would have expected Dani to take one of her own noms down, only to put Tyler up to get him out the house. Obviously, we know this is not the case, but I guess that would be viewed as a great move. I don't really know how you guys view it. Let me know. But it's obviously we know that is not the case. But in an all-star season, Paranoia is sky high, and it seems to be, and it's ramping up every single day now. You know, as the days go on, the Paranoia gets more and more and more, and especially we're now at the point where like our lives are beginning to turn on each other. It's only going to ramp up from here on out. Dani and Ian were discussing that they have the votes to do whatever they want this week, and Ian asked Dani what she wants to do this week, and Dani said that she wants to wait until the veto to see where she can play it out from there. We've seen her saying that they have the votes to keep Tyler to other people, whereas she's saying she's going to be Kevin's campaign manager. So I think the fact that Ian's still getting a word in with the HOH shows that he's actually got a lot of input in the game. You know, he's laying low, but he's still planting those seeds. He's still being able to speak to these big players who are in power, and for that, I salute his game, and I think he's doing fantastically. Nicole was telling Dani that she feels Dave Von has something to do with this power. Not that she had used it, but she believes that she knows some of the person who used it, and she's had something to do with behind it, which we know is again not the case. David, I don't think, disclosed to anyone that he had this power, so it's definitely a toss-up up in the air right now as to who's going to get the blame for it. But at the same time, it's just causing more and more paranoia and confusion in the power structure, and it's really sort of shaking things from the bottom all the way up. Nicole also theorised that the fact that Kevin could have been the person to use the power, it's another scenario of the perfect crime with him being the other nominee and not saving himself, putting himself up against, because the fact that Dani assured him that he was not going to be the target this week, so then he can safely know that he will likely be staying, so to take David down, someone else goes up, Kevin's still got that reassurance, but which we know now is sort of not the case, because Dani's promised safety to both nominees, which is a no-go, but Dani did say that if Kevin had done so, it would have sealed his own fate. Dani and Enzo were discussing that they believe David has had poor acting skills when it came to covering up this power, because as the day went on, it was sort of becoming slightly more transparent that David could have been the person who saved himself, actually. But Dani did express the fact that she would like Tyler to be the person to stay this week. But at the idea of Kevin winning the veto, obviously there's got to be someone to put up against Tyler. And Enzo did bring up the idea of putting Dave on, because Enzo all of a sudden this week became sort of a bit hell-bent on wanting Dave on to be on the block and getting her out the house because of the fact she fell off the wall after 3 minutes, and he was saying, you shouldn't be allowed to feel safe in the house with a free pass if you haven't won any comps. So as a result, Enzo would like Dave on to be up on the block if Kevin was the person to come down. Dani told Nicole that she will be putting up a pawn if Tyler wins the veto in order to ensure Kevin heads out of the house and goes straight to the jury house. But the idea of it, again, of Cody trying to gun for the veto was brought up as well. Cody said he will be trying to win, but he has told Tyler that if he does win the veto, he will not be using it because he doesn't want Dani to be forced to put up a fourth nominee, which is a good chunk of the house. It's just under half of the house now. There's 11 house guests left, so to nominate 4 is nearly at the halfway point. Just a couple more nominees, 1.5 more nominees, and then you've hit the halfway. But I don't think you can nominate half a nominee. But I think again, it's Tyler being able to put his trust in these alliance members that they're going to save him. It just seems a bit shifty how Dani really wants Tyler out, Tyler really wants Dani out, but Dani wants to keep Tyler, but she's not disclosing this to everyone. It's just a bit all over the place. But there's lots more game to be played, and there's a veto to be won as well, so things can just be flipped on its head just like that. Davon talked to Kevin about a plan to get Tyler out, and she believes that David, Enzo, Ian, Memphis and Nicole are on board, including themselves, which means 7 votes. And the magic number this week is 5, of course. There are 8 votes all told, so with 4 you can send it to a tie, but you obviously can't leave it down to the HOH to do the draw or break the tie because they may not vote in your favour. But that's 7 votes there, so I think that's very ambitious them saying that, because I think in reality it's really going to be Tyler who stays. If Kevin and Tyler are on the block, it's an all-star season. To have Kevin sitting up next to Tyler and keeping Tyler in the house seems crazy to me. Tyler is a fantastic player, and to keep him over Kevin is it's a perfect opportunity to send someone who nobody could get out in BB20 out the door. They've got the opportunity sitting right there if Tyler doesn't win the veto. So we'll see what move they make and if decisions are changed over the week. That is all of your game updates for today, folks. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video because I'm having so much fun making them. And as usual, guys, I just want to thank you all so much. It's the support is crazy, and I can't thank you guys enough. It's fantastic. But besides from that, guys, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend and enjoy the show this weekend, of course. Sunday night show, because Wednesday night show is now on Tuesday, I believe Julie said, in the live eviction on Thursday night. So crazy times there, but you know what? At least we're still getting our fix of Big Brother. So everyone, I hope again you have a fantastic weekend. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Do all of that stuff. And until your next live feed update, I've been your host, Tom Vasey. Good night.